Yo, do you line up all of your transfers with one of these? Let me show you how to throw that thing away. What's happening, everybody? Boy Big Brando, and today I want to show you guys a trick that I do with all of my heat presses just to make my life a little bit easier. Now, when it comes to laying down transfers straight, making sure everything is aligned properly, we as the presser start to get a little nervous. We start to second guess ourselves. We start to overthink things, which in the long run, we end up wasting a ton of time. Now, I get it. You want to make sure all your transfers are straight. You want to make sure everything's laying down correctly, and you don't want to make any mistakes because those mistakes could cost a lot of money and they can also waste a lot of time. So in my last shop life video, I was showing you guys how I line up things using the rails and the center of the press and all that stuff, and a lot of people were saying I don't have that same heat press, and I get it. You guys have the option to buy the same heat press that I do, but I know a lot of you guys already bought your heat presses and you're just looking for an alternative to laying down your transfers straight. So you've seen some TikTok ads and stuff talking about these things, so you bought a bunch of them so you can line up your transfers. That's cool, there's nothing wrong with that, but it also takes a lot of time to lay that down, lay the transfer straight, and when you're in production mode, time is money. So the longer it takes you to line stuff up with these rulers and these alignment tools, the slower you are at producing a t-shirt. So if you're like me, time is money. I'll show you some of the visual indicators that I use with built-in rulers like my hand. And I know some people out there might be like, hey, my hand is a different size than your hand. Once again, I'll try to show you some alternatives. So I'm gonna take the camera, take you into the shop, show you some heat presses, and show you some things that you can do with your own heat press to be a little bit more efficient with your time and get rid of these things. All right, we're using the Heat Press Nation True Spec Heat Press. This is what I showed in the last video. These are the rails that I was referring to. This is a little bit of a close-up. This is the chain that I was referring to. So these rails right here line up perfectly with the collar on a t-shirt. When I talk about the peak in the collar, I'm talking about where the collar meets the shoulder. These rails, or this base right here, match up perfect. So I use these as visual indicators. This chain right here is the exact center of the whole press. So I use this as something to visually see where the center of the press is so I can line up my transfers correctly. Now let me lay a t-shirt down just to show you what I'm talking about. All right, here's a size large t-shirt. And exactly what I'm talking about is right here. This is the peak of the collar that I talk about. Here's the collar, here's where it meets the shoulder. In this U shape right here, these are the two high points of the collar. They line up perfectly with these rails right here. So if you could see that, perfectly line up with these two rails. Here's the center of the actual press where that chain is. This is what I use to line up all of my transfers correctly. So I just laid the t-shirt all the way down. The collar, front of the collar, is laying all the way over the edge. If I pull this up, you can see that it lines up perfectly with these two rails right here. So when I'm doing like a left chest print or something like that, I could line that up perfectly straight here. From this rail, straight down is where I'm gonna lay the transfer down. I always go 4 fingers down. 4 of my fingers is 3 inches. So 3 inches down from the collar, and I'm going based off of the collar right here, or the peak in the collar. I'm going straight down. That's where I'm gonna lay my left chest print. All right, so once again, 4 fingers down, 3 inches from the collar is where I'm gonna lay the left chest print. Here's the center of the transfer. The center of the transfer is gonna line up perfectly with this rail right here. So 4 fingers down, center of the transfer lines up with this because that's lining up with the peak in the collar, coming straight down. This will land on top of the heart every single time. All right, now we spun the t-shirt around. This is the back of the shirt. Same exact thing. These rails line up. That little chain is the exact center of the whole heat press. So I'm going based on this chain, lining up all my transfers with it. This is the center of the whole heat press. That'll be the center of the t-shirt. So when I'm laying a transfer like this, here's the center. I pinched it for you guys so you guys visually can see where the center line is. I'm gonna line up the center of the transfer with that chain. That way I know exactly what the middle of the whole t-shirt and the press is, so I could lay this transfer down nice and straight. Center of the transfer, center of the press. I'm going based off this little chain right here because that's exactly the middle of the heat press. All right, so let's say that you don't have the Heat Press Nation True Spec heat press, but you do have this Heat Press Nation Signature Pro press right here. This doesn't have a lot of the same things that the True Spec does, like the rails and the chain and all that good stuff, but let me show you how to find the center of this heat press. All right, so right here on the Heat Press Nation Signature Pro Press, this is a 15 by 15. What I use for a visual indicator is this hydraulic pump back here. If you have this same press, chances are you have this same hydraulic pump back here. This is the exact center of the whole press. So visually, I'll use this to line up my transfers with. But let's say you're still having a hard time figuring that out. This is a 15 by 15 press. Half of 15 is 7.5. There's 7.5. That matches up with this hydraulic pump right here. That's the exact center of the platen. So that's where you want to center up all of your transfers. So let me pull this drawer out. And I have a piece of tape marked right here. This piece of tape is the exact center, lining up with this hydraulic pump, lining up with 7.5 inches. This is my visual indicator of where I'm gonna lay my transfers. So if we're laying down this transfer right here, the center of this transfer is marked here. I'm gonna line that up with this right here. So I could just easily look at it, make sure this little center crease mark is lined up with this piece of tape, because this piece of tape is lined up with this hydraulic pump right here. These are just visual things for me to see when I'm in production, that I could just knock things out real quick, where I don't have to pull out rulers and double check my measurements and all that stuff. I already know this is 7.5. I know this is half of the press. I know this is half of the press. Everything is in alignment. Now you might notice this piece of tape right here. That piece of tape right there is for left chest prints. It lines up with the peak and the collar. I put a piece there so visually I can see where it is. Here's the peak and the collar. Here's the ruler. Lines up perfectly. Peak and the collar, straight to my piece of tape. That's where I'm gonna lay down my left chest prints. All right, now when I'm in production, same exact thing. I lay the t-shirt all the way over the edge. Collar goes over the edge. So, left chest print comes from here, straight down. We're going 4 fingers down. Remember, that's 3 inches. I'm gonna lay my transfer to line up with this piece of tape right here. That piece of tape lines up with the peak and the collar. Peak and the collar comes straight down, lines up with the center of that transfer. This way, I don't always have to pull out the ruler. I don't have to pick this up. I don't have to lay nothing down here. I know as long as this is matched up with this and I'm going 4 fingers down, it'll always land right on top of the heart. All right, there you have it. That's exactly how I figure out all the alignment stuff with my press. So that way when I'm in production, I don't have to keep pulling rulers and measuring and doing all this stuff. I try to line up everything to make my process as smooth as possible. Will this work for you? Maybe. For myself, this is what works for me. You guys just have to find out what works best for yourself. Now, if your fingers aren't as fat as mine and they don't measure 3 inches, it's not the end of the world. People have smaller hands, some people have bigger hands. For myself, I know that this is a good 3 inches, so I use it as a built-in ruler so I can just like lay it down real quick, put the transfer down and be on my way. Let's say that your fingers don't add up to that. Your 4 fingers is only like 2 inches or something like that. If you needed something else to get like the actual 3 inches, so if you're doing this right here and it measures easily 3 inches, use your phone. Your phone might be a good 3 inches. Find something else or cut out a piece of cardboard. Make something that could be very easily thrown down, taken off real fast. It's all about efficiency. For myself, I don't want to have to keep pulling out this ruler or using something that I have to requires like an extra step for myself. So I use this built-in ruler right here. Everybody's hands aren't the same, but for me, this is what makes me a little bit quicker when I'm doing this kind of stuff. Let's say your finger's like 3.5 inches. Is that ½ inch gonna make a difference? No, visually, it's still gonna look the same on the shirt. Don't get hung up on it has to be 3 inches. It could be 4 inches. It could be 3.5. For myself, this is what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that I'm going to be as efficient, as fast as possible while still giving the best quality product that I possibly can give. But for myself, time is money. So I want to make sure that I'm actually doing things. I don't want to have to charge a customer 30 minutes to do one t-shirt because I'm having a hard time lining it up. That's not the customer's fault. For myself, I wanna make sure that I'm getting the most bang for my buck. My customer's gonna be happy. I'm gonna be happy because I'm moving along and I'm actually doing this as fast as possible for myself without jeopardizing the quality. So I use built-in rulers like my hand. I'll use things like putting pieces of tape on the table or on my press. I'm gonna find the center of my press right when I get my press so I know where everything lines up to make my life that much easier. Now, let's say you don't have any of the heat presses that I showed in this video. That's fine. Your heat press is still gonna measure 15 by 15, 16 by 20. It's up to you to find the center of that press. Finding the center of the press, whether you have that little chain or a hydraulic pump or whatever it is, always take a ruler. If you know you have a 16 by 20, half of 16 is 8. So at that 8-inch marker, if you don't have anywhere to put a piece of tape, put it on the table. Like if the press just goes straight down to the table, put it on the table. Put it somewhere where you can visually see every single time. Do what makes sense to you and your press. Just because I put mine on the base doesn't mean you have to put it on the base. If it makes sense to put it the other way, maybe you put it, maybe you don't even have a slide out drawer. If you don't have a slide out drawer, maybe it makes sense to put the tape closer to you instead of further from you or more into the press, because whatever your situation is and your workspace is, you have to make it work for yourself. This is what works for me. I'm just sharing the tip with you guys on how I find the center of my press, how to visually know where the center and the left chest print is, because these are the things that I do all the time when I'm pressing. So if I'm pressing and I'm knocking things down, I wanna make sure that I'm gonna get it lined up perfectly straight every single time. Now, you're gonna be like, man, they make laser alignment tools and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Or I've seen people make stuff out of Harbor Freight lasers and with magnets and this and that. You can use every magnet in the world. You can use every alignment tool in the world. If your t-shirt is not laying down straight on that bottom platen, the transfer will never be straight. So get in the habit of laying your t-shirts down straight first. When I say lay them down straight, you guys hear me say it in almost every video of me pressing. I pull down on the armpits on both sides. So if sometimes the shirt feels a little higher on one side, then I adjust that, pull it down so it feels even on both sides. I start at the armpits and I go down the t-shirt. That way, I know there's gonna be enough room on both sides. You'll feel if one side's higher than the other. That's just something that I do. There's other people that do different techniques on how to make sure their shirt's straight, but nobody really talks about putting your shirt down straight. They always talk about laying the transfer down straight. Fuck that. It starts with the t-shirt first. Make sure your t-shirt is nice and straight on the actual platen. Once that's straight, then you can use all your alignment tools that you want. Lasers, rulers, alignment guides, whatever you have. But remember, time is money. That's what I'm going based off of. I like to be efficient with my time. I like to make my life easier. I like to eliminate unnecessary steps. And everything I showed in this video is me eliminating the use of a ruler, alignment guides, or any other tool that requires an extra step. Am I the best at doing this? No. I just do what works for myself. I'm encouraging you guys to find out what works best for you, whether it's using your hand, a ruler, like I said, use your phone, use whatever you have to use to make your life easier. If you have any questions about anything I talked about in this video, leave it in the comments for me. That's the reason I'm making this video right here, is because I was reading the comments and people were like, hey, I don't have the same heat press that you do. How do you line this up? How are you so sure that those little rails line up with the collar? How do you find the center of it if you don't have that chain in the middle? If you don't have the Heat Press Nation True Spec Heat Press, find the center of your press, whatever press you have, using a ruler, and then find some visual indicators. If you don't have any on your press, make the visual indicators with a piece of tape or a sticker or a marker, whatever it takes for you to find the center of the press so you can visually see it. This will speed up your process. If you wanted to pick up the True Spec Heat Press or the Signature Pro or any heat press from Heat Press Nation, go to heatpressnation.com. I got it linked for you in the description box. If you wanted to see any piece of equipment that I have from Heat Press Nation, you could go to heatpressnation.com/BigBrando. That'll pull up everything that I own from them, so you can check it out for yourself. That's everything from base covers to the non-stick covers to the heat presses to everything. They got it on there, all right? Follow me on Instagram if you wanted to see me using all these heat presses live in action. Big Brando TV. Catch you guys on the next one, man. Yeah.